Montreal, the everyday, and the extraordinary. The Elias Makos Show on CJAD 800.
From the corner of Papineau and René-Lévesque, it's the Elias Makos Show right here on CJAD 800. Maxime Godot is producing this one. Andrew Malick's in for Jay Farrar this week, and we've got Trudy Mason on news and bass guitar. Trudy, how you doing?
Oh, well.
Listen, I'm bringing you in here off the top.
Yeah.
Because, I was listening to your newscast, and your newscasts are amazing. You and James, you just crush it all day long. And I'm going to say the name of the Air Canada CEO, and you said it so good that I actually just want to read my intro to the story, but then I point to you, and then you say the name, because it's so good. You think you can help me out?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, so John Gradek's on the line. John, you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, so John, listen, I'm going to do the introduction, but instead of me, because she said it so good, Trudy said it so perfectly that I don't want to spoil the fun around here. Okay, so I'm going to do an introduction as if you're coming on air, but I'm going to have Trudy say the CEO name. Okay, here we go.
Perfect.
Air Canada has named their new CEO. His name is
Van der Werf.
Isn't that cool?
Anko
Van der Werf. There you go. Did I say that anywhere? No, I shouldn't just ham it up here. He's currently president and chief executive officer at Scandinavian Airlines.
Van der Werf
will replace Michael Russo, who announced his resignation back in March. And guess what? He speaks a little French.
Je suis également conscient de l'importance de servir les Canadiens dans les deux langues officielles.
This was absolutely perfect. And, of course, Trudy's going to be replacing me when I go on parental leave. So thank you, Trudy, for helping me out.
Oh, you're welcome.
John, we got the big news this morning. We got a European to run our Canadian airline. Seems very appropriate since we're joining Eurovision. What's your take?
I think it's an interesting choice of a CEO. I think this guy's got some credibility in running airlines. I'm not sure. So I'm still trying to figure out what he's actually delivered as, a CEO type decisions in some of these airlines. I know in SAS, who's involved in their recent purchase of aircraft, new generation aircraft from Boeing and from Airbus. But that's about it. Really, he's pretty well an unknown quantity in terms of deliverables, but a very known quantity when it comes to leadership of various airlines around the world.
So he's a multilingual guy and checks off the French box. I just want to know, and as you bring up some questions as to what kind of CEO-like decisions he's made at his previous airline experience, I just want to know if this is an example. Like Air Canada, they have to hire someone who speaks French because of all of the controversies over the last few years. Do you think that having that requirement reduced their pool of candidates to the extent that they're not getting the best of the best?
Well, being a headhunter in my previous lives, that was one of the, key criteria that the board asked of the headhunters to get. And it was non-negotiable. I think that, you're right. There's a number of non-French speaking CEOs that would have made the cut, had it not been for that criteria. But I think that, given the diligence that the search firms went through with identifying French, speaking CEOs, they did a pretty good choice.
So, John, why don't you tell me about the challenges that face Anko van der Werf? What are the challenges ahead for this guy as he takes over the reins?
Where do I start?
Is it that bad? Is it that bad? Is that bad at Air Canada for you to say where do I start?
It's not. The airline's not humming. They really have, the last annual reports or quarterly reports we got from Air Canada, they suspended some on results because they weren't sure where the price of fuel was going. So, the Air Canada stock has been wallowing since COVID. It really hasn't taken off as it ought to have taken off as compared to some U.S. carriers. So, there's a lot of work. Customer service is still an issue. We still have people who wait 4 or 5 hours on the phone to talk to a chatbot, which then hangs up on you. On-time performance, not great. They're running 30, 35-year-old airplanes on international routes. So, there's a lot of challenges that Anko has in front of it in terms of trying to turn it around. Air Canada's been through this internationalization of CEOs before. If you remember, back in the, I'd say mid to late 90s, we had 3 back-to-back U.S. CEOs come into Air Canada, who, by the way, did not speak French.
Yeah.
And so Air Canada has a track record of parachuting. non-Canadians into the role. And if there's one disappointment I have, it's like, of all the 42 million Canadians that we have in this country, we couldn't find one.
Well, so that's a great question, right? Because if you're going to make French a requirement, well, then why don't we have a Canadian who speaks both languages? Why do we need to head to Europe? But again, it's well above my pay grade here. Let me just ask you to wrap up here, John. Does that mean, the way you just talked about the challenges ahead for Air Canada, does that mean Michael Rousseau, that maybe his performance wasn't that great, that he's leaving the company in disarray?
Well, I think, Michael Rousseau's, his claim to fame at Air Canada is basically economic. It's been financial. Air Canada has done wonders with its balance sheet, has done wonders with its income statement, has done wonders with its costs. And I rest my case.
Okay, John, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for hopping on this morning. Appreciate your instant reaction.
My pleasure.
That's John Gradek, lecturer in McGill University's Global Aviation Leadership Program. One other story I want to get to this morning, and it's the stink that's wafting in from British Columbia over this condo bailout deal. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we know that the Liberals now have a majority in the House of Commons. And when you have to think about, well, what does it really mean? Because if we looked at when the Liberals had, 170 seats, 171, they didn't have that majority. They were still governing. They could still get everything passed because nobody wanted to head to an election. So what changed by getting to 173, 174 and having a real deal majority? What changed? Well, the biggest thing that changed was that all of these House of Commons committees, these parliamentary committees that look into ethical issues, that look into things where the government may be doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Well, all of those committees now fall into Liberal leadership hands. When you've got a majority, you are running the show. And we certainly have an indication of why that is a big deal. Now, we've talked about it on the show over the last few weeks. This plan to bail out condo developers in BC. You have condos in British Columbia that are selling $650,000 for a 500 square foot condo. Nobody's buying them. The government's going to step in and they're going to buy them. In fact, a third of the condos that the government is going to buy actually cost $1 million. They say they're going to do some magic and turn them into affordable housing. I don't know how they're going to get that done, but people are trying to find some answers. Yesterday, at an emergency meeting convened, because the Conservatives can still call for an emergency meeting. They did so yesterday, and they asked for this parliamentary committee to look into this condo bailout. And it wasn't just the Conservatives. I need to point out the NDP. The NDP's Jenny Kwan yesterday saying the proposal to bail out these condo developers, quote unquote, doesn't pass the public smell test. She wants more transparency. But the Liberals have blocked any work over the summer. They say, no, we can't do anything now. Maybe we'll look at it come the fall. I doubt we'll get there. Here's Aaron Gunn. He's the Conservative MP for North Island Powell River in British Columbia, talking about this bailout and the need to look into it further.
Canadians have very real concerns about the Liberal plan to bail out billionaire condo developers in the fifth most unaffordable housing market in the entire world, starting with the fact that during the last election, the Prime Minister and the Liberal Party never campaigned on this. They never campaigned on spending more than $1 billion in taxpayer money to give a handout to their wealthy developer friends. They never campaigned on using the taxpayer dollars of hardworking Canadians to buy more than 2,000 condos in Greater Vancouver. Also, developers wouldn't have to lower prices and, God forbid, sell at a loss. And they never campaigned on artificially propping up what are already extremely unaffordable housing prices and preventing the market from moderating to a more affordable and sustainable level.
Now, that's the partisan version of the story I just told you from Aaron Gunn, the Conservative MP. And for the rest of the summer, this looking at this further will fall by the wayside, at least for the summer. I suspect the Liberals will be able to push this along even further. The way the federal government, Mark Carney's talking about this, they're really trying to push this on the provincial government in BC, saying it's their plan. But I'm not so sure that's what voters think. It certainly seems there's been a lot of pushback across the country to the thought of giving money to some of the people responsible for our terrible housing market. We'll leave it there on that front. When we return, we're going to talk about a water heater rental company that is charging exorbitant fees to a flood victim. Remember, over a couple of weeks ago, much of the West Island flooded, and we'll speak to one resident of DDO who's having a heck of a time when it comes to hot water because of it. That's next.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Stories impacting Montrealers. News impacting Montreal. The Elias Makos Show. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
Who's dealing with the flooding and the after effects of that flood we had just over a couple of weeks ago? For many Montrealers, those recent floods have come with an enormous price tag. Damaged basements, ruined belongings, insurance claims, and then the prospect of months and repairs can be stressful enough. One flood victim says the financial pain didn't stop there. After their water heater was damaged, they say the company Hydro Solution hit them with what they describe as excessive fees, adding hundreds, even thousands of dollars to an already devastating situation. Now they're speaking out. They're questioning whether companies that rent essential household equipment are taking advantage of customers when they're at their most vulnerable. Let's go to Rob Kaymakcioglu, CJAD 800 listener, who sent us his story. Rob, welcome to the program.
Hi, Elias. Thank you.
So, tell me about tell me about flood night. When we got hit with those incredible amounts of rain, what happened inside your home?
Oh boy. Well, my wife was home. I came home sort of just a little bit after it happened, and I came home to what looked like a swimming pool in my driveway. And unfortunately, it wasn't just myself. A lot of houses on our street and in the area was the same thing. We had about 4 feet of water in our basement. So, the entire bottom level, the garage and our basement rooms and everything has been a complete loss since the water level was so high. And it was, about 3 or 4 days of me, my wife, and our family members just tearing out everything from our basement. It was like a shock to come home to that. I've never seen anything like that.
So I can imagine, and you hadn't been previously flooded. Like I know a lot of people, like a few years ago, they went through the same ordeal. This is a first time for you.
This is a first time for us. We had never been flooded before. So
from there, obviously, I'm sure one of the first calls is to the insurance company, right? But you run into a whole bunch of issues here. Tell our listeners what happened to you.
So, we spoke with our insurance company, which for the most part has been as expected. One of the questions, obviously, they asked us was about our furnace and our hot water tank. They asked us if our hot water tank and furnace are rented. Our hot water tank indeed was rented. Both have been a loss. That we've come to realize that both are not functioning any longer. But the difficulty that's happening is, the flooding happened on June 20th. We had to wait until July 1st for a technician to be able to come to our house to even attempt to repair our hot water heater. So that means from the 20th until Canada Day, we had no hot water in the house.
Okay, and so when you're renting a hot water tank, the advantages, right? Because I think people always have this question, well, do you buy your hot water tank or do you rent it, right? I assume one of the advantages of renting is that, well, there's always someone to fix it if it breaks.
That was our understanding as well. Mm-hmm. And I understand that they were busy because of the flooding. We obviously weren't the only people in this situation. But when I had a conversation with them about, well, what if it can't be repaired? They said, well, we're going to try to repair it first. So even though it was difficult, and we were going through a couple of weeks of cold showers, we waited until they were able to send their technician to see if we could just, get it started up again.
Gotcha. So, have you had hot water since then?
So we have had hot water since then. Unfortunately, it wasn't through them repairing my hot water tank. When he arrived on Canada Day, he was certain that he was going to be able to start it up again. But then after about 2 hours of working on it, could not get it to restart, and it essentially said the control panel that's on the front of the tank needs to be replaced, and it'll take about another 2 weeks to get that part in order to replace it. So we were looking basically at another 2 weeks of no hot water. at that time, I didn't find that was reasonable, and we needed to do something. So we went and purchased a hot water tank, on our own dime, and brought it and installed it. Obviously, after having theirs uninstalled. So we have hot water, but that was us putting it in.
And this is where the difficulties come in for you, right? So you go out, you spend your own money to replace it, but then I guess you discover that when you're in one of these contracts for a rental, it's not as easy when it comes to changing your provider?
Yeah, so that same day, actually, it was the day after we had the conversation with an agent over the phone, and the day that the technician had come and said that it couldn't be repaired that same day, we actually got a bill online for $4,000, just above actually $4,060 and change, for a equipment buyback. Essentially, they were charging us for the unit that was damaged in the flood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just we didn't even know how to react, honestly, at a $4,000 bill when our rental amount is maybe like $40 a month.
So the $4,000 bill, though, that would be that should be covered by the insurance company. But again, the bigger issue here is that they were promising, well, we'll get your hot water back, but it'll take a couple of weeks. So it's one thing to charge you the $4,000 if it's going to be covered by insurance. It's another thing to charge that money and then you still don't have hot water.
Exactly. And so my issue is that, one, yes, they're saying that insurance should cover it, which actually my insurance agent has refuted. They say that they do not cover rental tanks. And then, two is, if I'm trying to get hot water sooner and they're not able to do that, while at the same time the technician is saying, oh, the tank is fine, we just need to change a part, and then it's usable. How are they going to charge a bill for that equipment that they're saying is fixed, but now they're making me, pay for?
Now, before you came on air, we reached out to Hydro Solution, right? Because we wanted to make sure we heard their side of this. They sent us a statement. They say, we're sincerely sorry for the situation experienced by this family during what's also already an extremely difficult time following the recent flooding. Hydro Solution, sensitive to the challenges faced by those affected by these events. We take the concerns that have been raised very seriously. The equipment involved is a gas-fired water heater that had been installed only a few months prior to the flooding. Following the incident, our teams have been in contact with the customer and treated the matter with urgency in an effort to resolve the situation related to the water heater. Despite these efforts, we were ultimately unable to reach an outcome that was satisfactory to all parties involved. Rob, did they do anything for you? Did they reduce the bill? Has there been any sort of rectification of this?
So here was their outreach. A couple of days or a day or so after we installed our own hot water tank, an agent called me and said, I listened to the recordings. I'm sorry for the experience that you had. We're willing to come tomorrow, so that the day after I was on the phone with them, to install a new hot water heater, which unfortunately was too little too late because, like I said, we'd already had one installed.
Yeah.
And, again, he didn't say we were going to remove the amount. They did reduce the charge from $4,000 to $2,400 for the hot water tank, as he had said that was an error. But there was no conversation of, we won't charge you anything. It was just, if you let us come install a new hot water tank, we can do that. And that's about all that they were able to offer. Yeah. And we still have a bill on our file now for $2,474.
And no confirmation that it'll be covered by insurance. You may be on the hook for that.
I mean, my understanding now, after my last conversation with our insurance, is yes, we are going to be on the hook for that, for something that we don't own. Mm-hmm. We rent, and through no fault of our own was damaged. I mean, it's not like our car crashed into it in the garage. This was something that was completely out of our control.
And I guess, the part of the things that they're saying is, well, you went out and replaced it on yourself, but you had a contract with us. I guess, I'm not in your position. I don't know what I'd do, right? If you have weeks and weeks with the cold showers, I don't know if I'd be able to take that either. So, I guess this is a story about some of the pitfalls of renting the equipment.
Absolutely. It really makes me rethink the entire time that I've been renting, our hot water heater, and was it really worth it? And, seeing what we're going through right now. Honestly, my first couple of days of cold showers, I was like, okay, I could kind of handle this. And after you get to 3, 4, and 5, it really starts to get difficult, I have to tell you.
How much did to buy a new tank, how much did that cost?
Just to purchase it was around $1,000, which also, is strange because they're telling me the cost of a tank is $2,474, but it cost me $1,000 to buy a new one, which, I mean, is still, I'm out of pocket for that.
Yeah, geez. Well, Rob, listen, coming up later on our show at about 10:50, we're going to be speaking to the mayor of you're in DDO, right?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, we'll be speaking to the mayor of DDO. I know it's, not just about hot water heaters, of course, but just about how this flooding has affected so many people in your neck of the woods. Well, listen, Rob, thanks for coming on. I hope to think that maybe our outreach to Hydro Solution got that bill reduced a bit. Obviously not enough, but thanks a lot.
Thank you, Elias. I appreciate your time.
All right, that's Robert Kaymakcioglu there. When we return on the Elias Makos Show for In Transit today, we're going to take a look at the lifespan of EV car batteries. Do you think one of the things about buying an EV that you're worried about is that you think the battery will go belly up a year or two after buying that EV? Well, they've crunched the numbers, and we're going to have the true lifespan of EV car batteries next.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
The Elias Makos Show, on demand.
On demand. Don't miss a thing.
Find your favorite clips at CJAD800.com and on the free iHeartRadio app.
Coming up on In Transit, one of the biggest concerns keeping some people from buying an electric vehicle has always been the battery. Questions about how long the battery will last. What happens if the battery needs to be replaced? A new report suggests those fears may be overblown. We'll talk about it next on In Transit.
Listen wherever, whenever, on your radio. Online at CJAD800.com. On your smart speaker.
Playing CJAD.
Or your phone. Through the iHeartRadio app. Where and when you need us. This is News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
La STM vous souhaite la bienvenue à bord.
This is your stop. In Transit with Elias Makos. CJAD 800.
In Transit today takes a look at electric vehicle car batteries. Now, one of the biggest concerns keeping some people from buying an EV has always been the battery. Questions about how long that battery will last. What happens if it needs to be replaced? Well, a new report suggests those fears may be overstated. Data from electric vehicle users that have logged hundreds of thousands of kilometers show that many batteries are lasting far longer than originally expected, and with relatively little loss in performance. Let's head over now to Joe Webb, Managing Director of R Symons. They're an independent EV specialist in the United Kingdom. And Joe, you're joining us from New Milton in the UK. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So tell me about what you've discovered on the lifespan of EV batteries from what you do day in, day out.
Well, we sell electric vehicles day in, day out, and we're a specialist, particularly in Tesla. And we've sold a lot of cars, all pre-owned, all second-hand. So when we get them, they've already had some use. And for some time, we've had the ability to interrogate the battery and work out, what state of health it's in and what kind of degradation it might have suffered. So we've been collecting data and looking at information for quite a long time now. In fact, before battery testing really became a kind of buzzword in EV sales, it's in the UK, certainly. It's only recently that not the manufacturers, but dealers have easily been able to test batteries. So that's something you'll find on car adverts. And of course, that's something that people use when looking to choose an EV. Most people hoping to buy a car with a battery which is a grade A, which would put it between 90 and 100%. But what we found is that these batteries all kind of do the same thing, and they all kind of perform in the same way. So in the first sort of 3 or 4 years or 50,000 miles, they all have a sort of degradation of about up to 90% battery health you'd expect, usually more than that, 94, probably quite typical. And at that point, that degradation curve just steadies right off. So further degradation is at a much slower rate. And we do have a number of vehicles that we own and run. By way of proving this, really, our YouTube channel, RSEV, we do a lot of videos about battery health and range and what to expect and what's good about them and all this kind of stuff. And we're just really open and sensible about what we say. And the vehicles that we run are a Model 3 long range with nearly 245,000 miles on it, practically the distance to the moon. Whether we'll get it back from the moon, I don't know. But, we're trying to put as many miles on that as we can. And the current battery health on that is about 86%. It would have got to about 90 at about 50, 60,000 miles. So, nearly 200,000 miles later, it's still only lost a few percent.
But how
performance car?
How recent is that type of longevity? Because now we can, it's been a while now. Now we can go back 15 years ago, right? When there was Nissan Leafs and some Model S Teslas out there. Yes. And I'd heard from people like the Nissan Leaf, it already had a smaller battery, and then it'd get to winter and on an older battery of an older EV, and they're struggling to get 100 kilometers, right? We're far away from those days, but at what point did these EV batteries start to prove themselves for longevity?
Well, I think the best example would probably be Tesla. The Model S's and the Model X's have always performed really well. There are certain battery packs in those that have been better than others, but the 75 pack, the 100 pack, and even the 90 pack have been really good. The Nissan Leaf, that didn't really have very sophisticated sort of battery management, and it didn't have a cooling system. And Tesla themselves have always been very good at having cooling and battery management. And other manufacturers also have that. I think one thing that slightly misleads is that in order to generate the most amazing customer experience, if you bought a Tesla, certainly, or any other EV in the early days and had a fault with a battery, the manufacturer would just replace the battery. So that gives people the impression that you need a whole new battery if you have a failure. But actually, it's not the case. You can repair parts of the battery, and now, in fact, more and more manufacturers are doing that. But to answer the question, really, the batteries have always been pretty good, and manufacturers have been, from the beginning, offering 8-year, 100,000-mile warranties on the batteries. And that kind of warranty you wouldn't see on any petrol diesel car. In our experience, it's really, really rare to have a battery pack replaced. So as long as we've been doing it, which is close to 10 years, so a good chunk of the 10, 15 you mentioned, they've been reliable. So it's not a new thing, but I think as time goes on, more and more people are learning, and the momentum of choosing an electric car and trying to find out about it is growing. And of course, with energy prices and fuel prices and all this sort of stuff, as a result, lots of people are suddenly coming to this. They might be a little bit late to the party, but the good news is they're joining at the best time. The punch bowl's still full.
We're with Joe Webb. He's managing director of R Symons, an independent EV specialist in the United Kingdom. Okay, so what you're saying here is that if you have an EV, even if you buy a used EV, you're more likely to get to 250,000 kilometers than you are to need a battery replacement.
Yeah, I would say that. And you're more likely to get to 250,000 miles in an EV than you are to get to 250,000 miles in any petrol diesel car. You can do it, but think of the cost of the maintenance and the bits you have to replace: clutches, gearbox, dual mass flywheel, head gaskets, exhaust pipes. I don't know what the bits are on an electric car versus a petrol car, but the electric car is far, far fewer parts. So even if you can get a diesel car to that point, you're going to spend loads more money on it. But our experience is we've got a 205,000 Model Y, 140,000 mile Model 3 Performance, and our favourite car, Miles, and they're soldiering on. They're doing great. And I don't see a reason that we'd you couldn't get to 400,000 miles, quite honestly.
Here in Quebec, I don't know if you know how much you know about the Quebec EV market, but in Canada, it's been the most successful EV market in this country. And after California, for North America, we're number 2 after California. We've had a lot of government programs.
And so many adoptions. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but how are things going on your side of the pond? Not just for your business, but the UK market in general. Are people getting on board EVs?
Yeah, EV sales are on the up, and there are more EV registrations year on year. It's growing all the time. The second-hand market is very buoyant, and we're very busy. There are fluctuations, things like, Donald Trump, who doesn't agree with the idea of wind farms, has single-handedly done more to get people into electric cars by, making it diesel or gas prices so crazy. So thanks, Donald. You're absolutely doing the opposite of what you think you are, but we're not here to talk politics, are we?
Yeah.
So, over here, the market is strong. Our government have rolled back some of the things that they said, like they were going to stop manufacturers manufacturing EVs at a certain point. They were also weren't going to tax them for road tax. This thing we have to pay here called road taxes, a couple of £100 a year on an EV. That was free. But it doesn't seem to be stopping people, because in the big picture, when you kind of zoom out, okay, you might have to pay a bit of road tax, and okay, you might have to pay, they're talking about charging you per mile on the road tax, but it's a bit too long-winded to explain the road tax system in the UK is boring enough if you live here.
Don't worry, I could tell you something. One thing that Quebecers know all about is governments and their propensity to charge various taxes and fees to people. So I totally get you.
The two certainties in life, death and taxes.
Joe, No, finish your thought there.
I can't remember what I was going to say. I think I was just joking about how come death and taxes are the two certainties in life,
Well, just to wrap up here, I want to get back to when you let's say your battery does fail, okay? Because I know people are still freaked out about that, or reason they wouldn't buy an EV. Because you were saying you don't have to replace the whole thing. You can just fix it, right? But what kind of costs are we talking about to fix an EV battery?
Well, the fear people have is the cost of the overall battery. And that does vary from manufacturer. But in the UK, you'd be looking for a battery in a Model 3, let's say, for probably about £9,000. That would be to replace the whole thing. Now, as a component, that is more or less the same as replacing the engine and gearbox in your diesel car, petrol car, which if it's a nice car, you could easily spend a similar amount of money. And a lot of that would be labour. But the battery pack itself, as you probably know, is made up of lots of segments with lots of little cells in. And usually what happens is some of those cells fail and they kind of cause a roadblock in the system. So those cells can be identified and they can be replaced, or sections of the pack can be replaced. Now, funnily enough, there's not that much information about the cost of those repairs because they're not actually that common. That's the overwhelming fact, that you don't tend to need to do it. Again, you're way more likely to need a new clutch or a new gearbox. You name a bit of your car that you're running at the moment, you're going to need bits of that long before you do an EV. So in reality, the cost I think I've seen is around about £2,500 to £3,000, which to repair the battery on a car that's worth, at that point, probably still £30,000 maybe. That's not crazy when you compare it to if you had a Mercedes where the gearbox goes and it's not under warranty. And don't forget, these cars still come with an 8-year 120,000 mile warranty. So it's still possible to buy a car that's even 5-6 years old that's still got quite a lot of meaningful warranty left. The reason the manufacturers can give these big warranties is because they can.
Yeah, that's right. Joe, thanks very much for joining us this morning and shedding some light on EV batteries, and have a good day in the UK. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, you too. Thanks, Elias.
That's Joe Webb right there. He's managing director of R Symons. They're an independent EV specialist. And for those of you doing the conversion on the pounds to Canadian dollars, about double the Canadian dollars based on those pound figures. When we return on the Elias Makos Show, we'll go back to Dollard-des-Ormeaux, and we're going to speak to the mayor of DDO. He's reacting to some protests that happened at DDO City Hall over the flooding from a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to get the city's view on what they can do, what they want done to help residents recover from those floods. That's next. Let's do traffic.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
and more. All your decade-defining favorites, all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away. Stories impacting Montrealers. News impacting Montreal. The Elias Makos Show. News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
All right, welcome back to the Elias Makos Show. We're going to head back to Dollard-des-Ormeaux. Now, residents there gathered outside of DDO City Hall last evening for a protest they called No More Floods. They demanded answers from city officials, called for stronger flood mitigation measures, better infrastructure planning, also greater accountability. Organizers say too many families have been forced to deal with repeated flooding, costly repairs, and uncertainty every time heavy rain is in the forecast. Let's listen to the organizer of this protest. He was on the show yesterday. Paul Henry Danowich is his name. Here's what he had to tell us.
I just talked to an 85-year-old gentleman. He lives out on Roger Pilon in DDO. He says he's been a resident of Dollard since 1969. Basically, he just told me he has the backwater valve. He doesn't have a driveway that descends into the house. He has a flat above ground driveway. His foundation sits on high land, and he's been flooded every year. Mind you, this year is the worst he's ever had. He has 3 feet of water in his basement. We have residents that are afraid to develop their basements, that are just, they just leave it there. And, we don't want to live like that. Dollard's a really good place to live, and we pay a lot of taxes.
So that's Paul Henry Danowich on our program yesterday. Now let's head over to DDO City Hall, where we find the mayor of Dollard-des-Ormeaux, Alex Bottausci. He's on the line. Mayor Bottausci, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me, and good morning to all your listeners.
So obviously you have some very vocal people voicing their frustration, to say the very least here. What do you want to say to the residents that gathered last night, had some pointed questions for you and your council as well? What's your message?
Well, the first thing is that I want to recognize all the struggles that are out there. It's not easy dealing with this. As I mentioned last night in the meeting, I myself and half council were also flooded, so we completely understand the struggles and the pain behind that. Well, let's begin with that. There have been actions by the city since 2024, when the first flood hit Dollard and the surrounding cities as well. We're not the only one. There are Kirkland, Pointe-Claire, Sainte-Anne-de-Bellevue, Pierrefonds, Île-Bizarre, just to name a few cities. This is a issue, a climatic movement. And what tends to happen is that the existing infrastructure that is in place cannot withstand the amount of water that is coming literally from the sky. This last storm, we're looking at possibly 150 millimeters of water coming down in a defined geographical area in the period of 1 hour, where our systems were originally designed, North American standard, for 80 millimeters of water in 1 day. You can understand how the entire system could get backlogged and water poured out onto the streets, and then from the streets poured out onto lawns, and from lawns made its way into the basements of our residents, and the basements became catch basins. Mm-hmm. Now, since 2024, the city has been quite active on this file, where a set of professional engineers in aquatics and hydraulics were hired through a government program or through a government grant, came up with some 7-8 proposals, and 2 of those projects are being done on the dime of our residents. One was done last year, one is being done this year. And this year we have a catch basin going in of 600,000 liters of capacity. And we have 5 other projects that we're waiting for funding from the provincial government. That's why I've been saying over and over again that I'm pushing the provincial government, and I'm saying, show me the money from the provincial government and I will show you a bunch of meaningful projects that will have an impact for our community.
So that is a hang-up here, because I've heard that that there have been plans in place, and that you haven't been acting on the plans, that you have the money in order to do some of these projects. But
well, we have acted, Elias. We have. It's right now. Just drive by Tecumseh and you will see the catch basin being built. Mm-hmm. Right, there was a catch basin built at Terry Fox Park last year, and there are more projects coming. But we have a finite amount of money at the city of Dollard-des-Ormeaux, and some of these projects could qualify at the provincial level. And it's the provincial level that needs to release this money to us.
And you're not only facing, protests from residents, you're also facing a class action lawsuit. Also spoke to an attorney this week on the program, and they say, this is a new normal. The heavy rainfall in short periods of time. It's a new normal we've known about for quite some time. It's not that recent, and that your city and others, by the way, should have been better prepared. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, since there's a class action suit, I would love to answer, but unfortunately, anything regarding the class action suit, I cannot answer anything to that degree.
Okay, well, put the class action lawsuit aside. What do you say to residents who have said, hey, you know what? This is not 2 years now. This has been 10 years where we have this type of rainfall. It's been 20 years where we have this type of rainfall, and that more should have been done sooner. What do you say to that?
Perhaps in other parts of Montreal, perhaps in other areas, but certainly not in the West Island. This phenomena for us, since it's been active since 2024, we've seen it pop up again in 25. And since 24, like I've mentioned to you already, with the hiring and the analysis of the entirety of Dollard-des-Ormeaux that was done in 24 to 25, in 25 things were done. We've got more coming in 26. And I anticipate, once I can get this funding from the provincial government, you will see more mitigating measures being implemented in Dollard-des-Ormeaux.
Right now, are you concerned that, we could get another rainstorm later this year, next year, and that your city would face a similar fate?
I think my city or any city where 150 milliliters of water are falling from the sky will face the same fate. That is the reality that everybody is dealing with. And that is where also it needs to be a collaborative thing that we need to look at together. This is another reality. Residents as well must do or try to do everything possible in order to mitigate against flooding and protect themselves as best as they possibly can. And I know that there are many stories out there where they have done that and still it was not enough. Mm-hmm. We recognize that. I happen to be one of those residents that had a bunch of clappet valves and regraded my land and so on and so forth, yet it was not enough. I had 2 feet of water in my basement.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're living it. You're going through this thing.
100%.
So you do understand. Hard to say you don't understand what people are going through. You understand what people are going through. Yeah. What's your message to those who are particularly frustrated, upset, angry right now?
Look, my feelings are with them, and I get it. It's not that we don't get it. To every situation, there's 2 sides, right? And so I can only appeal to them by saying, get yourself informed. Your city has taken action. We have been proactive for the last 2 years. We've done projects. We're doing projects. We are in the process. Everything is ready to go. It's just a question of locking up those funds, and I believe it may be, a month or 2 away from being able to lock those funds up. I'm really pushing hard for that. And once we do, that will help to mitigate some of these awkward anomalies that we're getting, these climatic change, or these anomalies that we're getting in our weather patterns.
Mayor Bottausci, thanks for coming on today and responding to some of the other voices we've heard during the week. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That's Elias Bottausci, the mayor of Dollard-des-Ormeaux. When we return on the Elias Makos Show, we'll head to the Quartier Latin, the Latin quarter of this city. This year, they're actually complaining about parts of Saint-Denis that have cars that were not pedestrianized. We're going to get an update on how the summer season is treating Saint-Denis Street next.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll. We're coming to get you! One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all. Bryan Adams Radio. I'm coming back to you. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Hey everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.
You're listening to the voice of Montreal.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
An iHeartRadio station.
This newscast is brought to you by Supermarché Acavan. Cool off this summer with fresh, sweet watermelon from Supermarché Acavan. Choose from juicy whole watermelons or freshly sliced, ready to enjoy.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.